London, 1888. The year the shadows grew teeth. In the East End, where fog draped the streets like a burial shroud, life was hard, and death, never far behind. Whitechapel, a maze of narrow alleyways and crumbling brick tenements, breathed in silence and exhaled poverty. Gas lamps flickered against soot-stained walls. Children coughed in the dark. And in the distance, the faint click of booth wheels could be heard, slow, deliberate, fading into the night. It was a city divided. To the west, the polished wealth of Mayfair and Kensington. To the east, the forgotten, the broken, the desperate. Here in Whitechapel, women walked the streets for pennies. They sold their bodies to survive, to buy a loaf of bread, a bed for the night, a drop of gin to dull the cold gnaw of hunger. In these shadows, evil found its cover. By late summer, whispers crept through the alleys, a woman had been found. Throat slit. Face unrecognizable. The police called it unfortunate. The papers called it filth. But the people called it fear. And then it happened again. And again. And again. Whitechapel held its breath. The killer did not run. He walked. He waited. He chose. Each time, his hand grew bolder. Each victim more brutal than the last. And as gaslights burned low, a figure stalked the silence, never seen, never caught, never named. They called him Jack. But before the name came, before the letters, the horror, the myth, there was just a body in the dark. And the fog. And the fear. This is the story of the man history never saw. The women history tried to forget. And the city that was forever changed. It begins on a quiet August night. With a woman named Mary Ann Nichols. She was 43 years old. They called her Polly. Her full name, Mary Ann Nichols. Born into hardship, and buried by it. On the night of August 30th, 1888, she was last seen alive, walking through Buck's Row, a quiet, shadowed street in Whitechapel. It was just past 2:30 in the morning. She'd been turned away from a lodging house, again. Too drunk to pay the 4 pence for a bed. She told the keeper, "I'll get the money. See what a jolly bonnet I've got now?" And then she disappeared into the night. At 3:40 a.m., a man named Charles Cross was walking to work when he saw what he thought was a tarp in the road. As he came closer, he realized it wasn't cloth. It was a woman, lying on her back, skirts lifted above her waist, motionless. She was still warm. But her eyes were lifeless. Blood pooled beneath her head. Her throat had been slashed twice, deep and violent, nearly severing her windpipe. The wounds were clean, precise, silent. A constable arrived, and as the dim light of morning broke through the fog, they saw more. Her abdomen had been slashed open. Subtle, but deliberate. It was brutal, but calculated. There was no sign of struggle. No screams had been heard. Whoever had done this, had vanished into the night, unseen, unheard. Mary Ann Nichols was the first of what would later be called the Canonical Five, the 5 women officially linked to Jack the Ripper. But in truth, she was far more than a name on a coroner's report. She was a mother. She once had a home, a family. But life had weathered her, worn her down until survival became a nightly challenge. She died alone. Not in some dramatic chase, but in silence, in a back street no one cared about, in a part of the city the wealthy never dared to walk. Her death didn't shake the city. Not yet. It was just another murdered woman in Whitechapel. The newspapers covered it, yes, but briefly. The headlines were cold, clinical. But something had begun. Something far darker than London had known in centuries. In the days to come, the killer would return. He would choose again. And his next victim would be named Annie Chapman. It was just over a week after Mary and Nichols was laid in the earth. London hadn't yet realized what it was dealing with. The city was restless, yes. But in the East End, death was common, violence was a neighbor. People moved on. Or tried to. But Jack did not. And on the 8th of September, 1888, in the early hours of the morning, he chose again. Her name was Annie Chapman. She was 47. A quiet woman. Thin. Unwell. She sold flowers, and herself, when she could. She had been living in a lodging house on Dorset Street. That morning, like Polly Nichols before her, she didn't have the money for a bed. So she left, just after 1:30 a.m., telling the watchman she would soon earn it. She never returned. Her body was found at 29 Hanbury Street, just before 6 a.m., in a small, narrow yard behind a row of houses. She had been laid out deliberately. Her skirts raised. Her throat slashed, deeper than before, nearly to the spine. The murderer had escalated. And there was more. Her abdomen had been opened, flesh pulled aside, organs disturbed. Her uterus had been removed, cleanly. With speed. With knowledge. The police began to whisper, a surgeon? A butcher? Someone who knew the human body. Someone who was not killing in rage, but with purpose. Witnesses claimed to have seen Annie speaking with a man earlier that morning, middle-aged, shabby genteel, wearing a deerstalker hat or a peaked cap. Descriptions varied. And as before, he vanished before anyone could truly see him. And just like that, Annie was gone. Another woman. Another life. Her body had barely cooled when the fear took root. This wasn't random. This wasn't drunken violence. This was deliberate, systematic, ritualistic. London's press turned its attention east. The word Ripper had not yet been printed, but the story was forming. Mary and Nichols had been the first. Annie Chapman was the second. And the killer, he was just getting started. Next. The world would come to know Elizabeth Stride. And Catherine Eddowes. Two names forever linked by one bloody night. September 30th, 1888. A Saturday night. In Whitechapel, the streets were alive with movement. Drunks stumbled from pubs. Policemen patrolled dark corners with oil lamps and heavy boots. Vendors closed up their carts beneath a rising fog. It was just past 1 a.m. And in Dutfield's yard, a quiet, fenced area off Burner Street, the Ripper struck again. Her name was Elizabeth Stride. They called her Long Liz. She was 44. A Swedish immigrant. Tired. Poor. Surviving on scraps of kindness and gin. At 1 a.m., a man named Louis Deemschutz turned his pony cart into Dutfield's yard. The pony reared, nervous. And there, lying near the entrance, was Elizabeth. Her throat had been slashed, a single, clean cut. But something was missing. There were no abdominal mutilations. No organ removal. No post-mortem desecration. Had the killer been interrupted? Witnesses nearby mentioned a man fleeing the scene. Dark coat. Felt hat. Quick steps vanishing into the London mist. Some say Jack had been startled, forced to flee before finishing what he started. But if that were true, then someone else would die. Just 45 minutes later, at 1:45 a.m., a constable named Edward Watkins walked into Mitre Square, a small, open courtyard in the City of London, just a short walk from Burner Street. There, he found a body lying near a corner wall. It was Catherine Eddowes. She was 46. Sharp-witted. Known to sing in the streets. She'd been picked up for drunkenness just a few hours earlier. And released from the police station at 1 a.m. 45 minutes later. She was dead. This time, the Ripper had not been disturbed. Her throat was slashed. Her face disfigured. A piece of her nose cut away. A deep V carved into each cheek. Her abdomen had been opened. Her left kidney was missing. So was her uterus. Whoever had done this had anatomical precision. Speed. Confidence. He vanished again. 2 women. 2 deaths. Less than an hour apart. London awoke to panic. They called it the double event. The newspapers screamed with outrage. The police scrambled, questioning hundreds, examining boots, knives, alibis. But Jack was always gone. Always a whisper ahead. A breath in the fog. Later that morning, a piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron was found in Golston Street, bloodied, tossed beneath a stairwell. Above it, on the wall, in chalk. The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing. The police wiped it clean. Afraid of starting a riot. The Ripper had struck twice. The city had seen his power. His cunning. His cruelty. And still, he wasn't finished. There would be one more, the most savage of all. Her name was Mary Jane Kelly. She was young. Too young to end the way she did. Her name was Mary Jane Kelly. Just 25 years old. The youngest of the Ripper's victims. And the only one murdered indoors. She was Irish by birth. Beautiful, they said. Pale complexion. Auburn hair. A delicate voice when she sang. And like the others, she had been broken down by poverty, addiction, and the weight of life on the streets. She lived in a single-room lodging at 13 Miller's Court, just off Dorset Street, a cold, cramped place behind a shop. On the morning of November 9, 1888, her landlord sent a man to collect the rent. It was a Friday. Rain tapping gently at the window glass. The man knocked. No answer. He reached through the broken window pane, moved the curtain aside. And what he saw inside that room would haunt him until his dying day. Mary Jane Kelly's body was on the bed. Or what remained of it. Her face had been obliterated. So mutilated it was nearly impossible to identify her. Her throat had been slit all the way to the spine, twice, as if once wasn't enough. Her abdomen had been emptied. Organs removed. Arranged beside her. Some placed beneath her head, as if in offering. Her heart was missing entirely. Her body had been dissected in a frenzy, but a methodical one. He had taken his time. Unlike the others, this murder had occurred in privacy. Behind a locked door. No one had heard a sound. Some believe the killer may have known her. Others say it was simply opportunity, a private room, a final canvas for his madness. But in this, there was something different. More intimate. More violent. More unhinged. The police were horrified. Journalists left the room pale and speechless. Photographs were taken. And even today, they remain among the most gruesome in the history of crime. This was the last known victim. After Mary Jane Kelly, the killing stopped. At least, the ones we know about. 5 women. Each one real. Each one lived a hard, aching life. And each one, reduced to a name in a case file. Until now. Their names were Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Jane Kelly. The canonical 5. But was Jack truly finished? Or did he simply vanish into the smoke? Next, we turn to the letters. To the words that gave the killer a name. And a voice. It wasn't just the killings that gripped London. It was the silence that followed them. No witnesses. No footprints. No sound, no trace. Only a corpse, a shadow, and a growing fear that something inhuman was walking among them. But then, the killer began to speak. Or, someone claiming to be him. The first letter arrived on September 27, 1888, just after the murder of Annie Chapman. It was sent to the Central News Agency. It began simply, "Dear Boss." The handwriting was smooth. The tone, cocky. Cold. Confident. "I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track." Then came the words that would make history. "The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." It was the first time that name had been used. Jack the Ripper. It was brutal. Sharp. Memorable. And the press ran with it. The letter was widely published, and suddenly, the killer had a persona. An identity. A stage. 2 days later, after the double murder of Stride and Eddowes, a second letter arrived. This time, not a letter. A postcard. I was not codding dear old boss when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jackie's work tomorrow. It referenced the killings before the public knew the details. Some began to believe these letters were genuine. Others believed they were hoaxes, written by journalists to sell more papers. But then, something arrived that no one could ignore. On October 16th, a small package reached George Lusk, head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, a citizen patrol group. Inside was a letter. More disturbing was what accompanied it. A small piece of human kidney, preserved in alcohol. The letter was addressed. From hell. From hell. Mr. Lusk. Sir, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. The other piece I fried and ate, it was very nice. It ended. Catch me when you can. The writing was different from the other letters, cruder. Almost childlike. Misspelled, unpunctuated. More disturbing for its simplicity. Was this the real Ripper? Taunting the men chasing him? Sending a piece of his victim as a trophy? To this day, no one knows. The letters never led to an arrest. They only deepened the fear. And behind them, a killer walked free. Or perhaps he was never real. Perhaps Jack was many men. Or no man at all. Just a name. A shadow. A myth built on blood. But the women were real. And the fear was real. Next, we examine the suspects. The theories. The madmen, doctors, royals, and strangers, all accused. None convicted. The case grew cold. But the legend only grew darker. 5 women were murdered. Perhaps more. But no one was ever caught. No trial. No confession. Only silence. Still, names emerged. Faces appeared. Whispers became theories. And over time, the suspects grew. Some were mad. Some were brilliant. Some were powerful. All of them were dangerous. Let us walk through the fog now. And meet the men who might have been Jack. Suspect 1, Montague John Drute. A barrister. A schoolteacher. Educated. Quiet. Detached. He disappeared in December 1888, just weeks after the last canonical murder. His body was found in the Thames, an apparent suicide. His family believed he was insane. The timing of his death was suspicious. And some officers at the time privately believed the murders stopped because he was dead. But there was no proof. No motive. Only a corpse. And questions. Suspect 2, Aaron Kosminski. A Polish-Jewish immigrant. Barber by trade. Paranoid. Delusional. He hated women, especially ladies of the night. He was institutionalized in 1891. Some say he was violent, heard voices, refused to bathe. A senior police officer later claimed that Kosminski was the killer, but they had no legal evidence. In recent years, DNA from a shawl allegedly linked to one of the victims was tested. The results were inconclusive, but hinted at Kosminski's ancestry. Still, the science is debated, and the shawl's origin is uncertain. The mystery remains. Suspect 3, Dr. Francis Tumblety. An American quack doctor. Tall. Charismatic. Known for collecting female body parts in jars. He was in London at the time of the murders, and arrested for unrelated charges. Then he fled back to America. The police noted him as a possible suspect, but no evidence ever tied him directly to the crimes. Some say he was eccentric. Others say sadistic. But Jack the Ripper? Still uncertain. Suspect 4, Prince Albert Victor. The grandson of Queen Victoria. Heir to the throne. Was the Ripper a royal? Unlikely. But the rumors persist. Some claimed the prince had a secret affair with a commoner, and that the Ripper murders were part of a cover-up to protect the crown. This theory is rich in conspiracy, but poor in proof. Most historians dismiss it. But it's the kind of story London loves. A killer prince, stalking the alleys in silence. There are other names. Walter Sickert, the painter, obsessed with death and decay. George Chapman, a poisoner who killed women long after the Ripper killings. James Maybrick, whose so-called diary confessed to the crimes, a likely hoax. Each theory adds more fog. Each suspect more shadow. And yet, none of them are certain. Perhaps the Ripper was a nobody. A ghost. A butcher. A man who walked past the police and into oblivion. Or perhaps he was many men. Perhaps the terror was not in the man himself, but in what he represented. Violence without reason. Death without justice. And a city that watched, helpless, as its darkness grew. The story of Jack the Ripper ends not with a name, but with silence. No trial. No confession. Just 5 women lost in the shadows. And a mystery that endures over a century later. And so, the story ends. No killer unmasked. No final justice. Only history. And memory. The name Jack the Ripper became myth. A symbol of evil, stalking the narrow, cobbled alleys of London's East End. But the real story was of the women. Mary Ann Nichols, mother of 5. Annie Chapman, grieving a lost child. Elizabeth Stride, survivor of shipwrecks. Catherine Eddowes, a bright, sharp-tongued woman. Mary Jane Kelly, young, artistic, once a singer. They were more than victims. They were human. And though the city tried to forget, you have remembered them. London has changed. The gas lamps have gone. The slums replaced. But if you walk the streets of Whitechapel in the early hours, you might still hear the echoes. A boot on cobblestone. A whisper in the mist. And now, the story is over. The shadows fade. Sleep comes softly. Good night.